A very good morning to everyone. It is with pleasure that I, Devaparna Pottar, and my friend Samruddh Surana welcome you all to the 84th Kale Memorial Lecture at the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, Pune, where we have the privilege and honor to have with us and host Dr. Michael Spence, our chair, Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, and our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ajit Ranade. The Kale Memorial Lecture was instituted in the memory of the founder of this institution, Shri Rao Bahadur R.R. Kale. The list of speakers in this series features prominent intellectuals as B.R. Ambedkar, P.C. Mahalanobis, A.P.J. Abdul Kalam, and Abhijit Banerjee, among others. It is wonderful indeed to host Dr. Spence with us this beautiful morning.
I would now like to request Dr. Ranade to please join us on the stage and facilitate our chair for the day, Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, as we welcome him to the stage. Dr. Mashelkar is former Director General of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research and President of Indian National Science Academy, and is one of the leading scientists in the world, as has been recognized by the Padma Vibhushan awarded to him. I would now like to invite Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar to please felicitate our guest for the day, Dr. Michael Spence, as we welcome him onto the stage. Dr. Michael Spence is an esteemed economist, academic, and Nobel laureate known for his significant contributions to the field of economics, particularly in the areas of asymmetric information and economic growth.
I would now like to invite Dr. Ranade to give his welcome remarks.
Thank you, Devaparna. It's my privilege and honor to welcome you all to this 84th Kale Memorial Lecture. It is a very prestigious event for Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, and I join you all in welcoming Dr. Michael Spence. As you know, he's a Nobel laureate. All of you students in the hall here, of course, know about him because we read and study the Spence signaling model. So instead of providing you a signal, we brought the real person. So please welcome him again. I think there's going to be a formal introduction of the speaker, Michael Spence, right? So I just don't want to take too much time, but I must say that first of all, I want to thank him for accommodating his schedule. There was an emergency, but therefore we had to move the time. And thank you all for joining us this morning. Apart from his work in game theory, asymmetric information, and adverse selection, and all those complicated concepts from game theory, he's actually done a huge amount of work in many other areas. The one that I'd like to mention is where he was the chairperson of the Growth Commission. It was started as an initiative from the World Bank, but then it became a very big initiative around about early 2000s, I think. And one distinctive thing I'd like to mention, which we just mentioned over coffee, was it's about a 75-page report. And it's distinctive because it has one section, because most of these reports say what should be done, economic reforms, how you can get, but it also has one section devoted to what should not be done. So it has best practices and worst practices. So that's very distinctive about that report. We are very grateful to him here. Just a couple of words on the Kale Memorial Lecture. Rao Bahadur Kale, whose portrait is on your left, and on your right here, on my right rather, is Dr. D.R. Gadgil, who is the first and founder director of the institute. So it was thanks to a donation, I should say a generous donation by Rao Bahadur Kale, a distinguished lawyer himself, that the institute came up 93 years ago. So we are here, and the series of distinguished speakers, as Devaparna and Samruddha said, includes Dr. Ambedkar, Mr. Manmohan Singh, Mr. C.D. Deshmukh, among many other people, including a couple of Nobel laureates, and we're very happy to receive you today, Michael Spence. So with that, I will hand it over back to the MC. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ranade. I would now like to invite Dr. Michael Spence to please come up onto the stage for the lecture that we've been waiting for. And as I do so, I would like to take the opportunity as the MC to just quickly mention that Dr. Spence's work is the reason that when I watch Seinfeld, the one thing that I think about is signaling and equilibrium that results in from the signals that happen between the two of them. Yeah, that's the meme right up there. Okay, with that, please welcome onto the podium Dr. Michael Spence for his lecture.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really honored to be here to give this distinguished lecture. It's kind of humbling when I look at my predecessors in this. So thank you so much for having me. And I apologize for the early hour that you had to get up this morning. It was a disruption on the medical side in my family. We don't have much time today, so let me just launch in. I want to talk about fairly large changes in the global economy and where we're likely to go. I hope it sounds optimistic, because the main theme is that your generation has been handed in a sequence, a whole set of very powerful scientific breakthroughs and technological tools, which we can use to drive benign growth patterns, inclusive growth patterns, sustainable growth patterns. But we live in a very complicated, shock-prone world. So I'll try to frame this, and hopefully it will be of some interest to you. The way I think about this is that we are living in a world that's prone to shocks, crises, and so on. We have big secular transformations underway that are causing, things that we hadn't seen for a long time, like inflation. But underneath all that, we have at least three enormously powerful technological and scientific transformations, and I've just written them up here. I think you know them all. One is the multi-decade digital transformation, and we now have these stunning breakthroughs in artificial intelligence in the last roughly 10 to 15 years. It's a kind of paradigm shift in that part of the world. By the way, for those of you who are interested in the informational structure of markets, this is transforming. The digital technologies are transforming the informational structure of markets. So I haven't completely vanished from my previous life. The second one is somewhat less written about, but it's no less important. It's a revolution in biomedical and life sciences. And the third one is this massive, massive energy transition that with a big technological component that we need to go through if we're going to have sustainable patterns of economic development and growth in the global economy. Now, the main message I want to say today is these aren't just breakthroughs, but they're breakthroughs associated with high levels of accessibility and declining costs, right? And I won't try to review them all. If we had more time this morning, I would, take you on a tour. This is TSMC's product map. If you're carrying an iPhone, you have a 5 nanometer chip in your pocket. We're not very far from the 3 nanometer chips with 291 million transistors per square millimeter. I mean, these are supercomputers by the standards of the days, even the early days of the internet, 25 years ago. I'd like to remind people the mobile internet, which everybody takes for granted, which has been transformed by the geo-revolution here in India, is approximately a little less than 20 years old, and we take it for granted. It's just stunning. This is the reason why a vast number of people now have access to the internet in the global economy. So, there are others. I'll spend a minute on this. So I think almost everybody on the planet has heard about Gen AI or ChatGPT or large language models or foundation models or whatever. But this is a slightly more elaborate explanation of the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. So early on, we had handwriting recognition, speech recognition, very large improvements in translation. These are, an AI will, augment this. I'll just pause there. I was told by the CEO of a major newspaper group in India that they have now realized that their publication, which I believe comes out initially in English, can now be translated into 28 languages in about a second and published in digital form at no incremental cost, zero. Okay, and that's a world it's almost hard to comprehend if you grew up studying economics, with increasing marginal costs and something like that. It's just a very different world. And then we had this. I hate it when the laser doesn't use it because I use it to incinerate people who ask questions I don't like. But that thing in the middle, that thing in the middle is image recognition. This is a genuine breakthrough, very important. And it occurred incredibly quickly. Basically what was happening is that people were using old AI technology to try to get it done, and it's impossible. You just can't code, how to recognize a cat, for example. And so they stopped trying to do that and switched to the neural network version. And you can see roughly around 2016, the AI passed the average human in recognizing images. And then finally, the one that is talked about a great deal is the foundation models and think of it as the chat GPT world. And that's basically, the paper that initiated this round of innovation was written at Google in 2017. I tried to read it, but I couldn't. It's too hard. But this has all happened in the last 5 years, and from the public's point of view, it's basically slightly more than a year old. So I'll come back and talk about its impact. There are other things. This is the image recognition breakthrough. This was done in California around Stanford University. The leader of that was Fei-Fei Li, one of the top AI researchers in the world. This is in the intersection of digital technology and biomedical science. And I thought I'd spend a minute on it because it gives you a bit of a sense of what's likely to happen. I'm sorry about the hum. So DeepMind, which is a very advanced research AI organization in London, now owned by Alphabet or Google, is famous for having mastered the game of Go. And the reason they were famous for that is because the game of Go has so many permutations that you can't actually, with existing computing power, catalog them all. It's impossible. So they had to get around that. And there were 2 rounds of that. The second round, the machine played against itself and discovered strategies in the game of Go that humans have never discovered. That's actually an important insight. Their next project is, I think I've discovered, is almost unknown. It's called AlphaFold. And what this is a project to predict the 3-dimensional structure of a protein from the amino acid sequence that defines a protein. And the reason that's important is, if you don't know the 3-dimensional structure, what a protein looks like, what a molecule looks like, then you can't tell what it'll bind to, you can't do drug discovery and so on. So it's a core technology in much of biomedical science. So what they do is this is a very labor-intensive thing. A highly trained postdoc can take between weeks and months to get this done in a lab. So they set out to do it in 2 years. They essentially succeeded. And that, by succeed, I mean they produced pretty accurate predictions. AIs are prediction machines, and they're probabilistic prediction machines. I think we lose sight of that fact sometime. Anyway, these are quite good predictions. Once they realized they succeeded, they took the 200 million known proteins in the world, predicted their 3-dimensional structure, and published it in a database that's open access, and every researcher in the world at 0 cost can access that database. This is just a stunning breakthrough in a part of the world most of us don't live in, which is biomedical science, pharmaceutical research, and so on. This is DNA sequencing. You all know what that is. It's also a core technology in biology. It's done in part with the help of digital support. This thing's costs behaved like Moore's law in the semiconductor world for a while and then dropped like a stone. So DNA sequences now, full DNA sequences, can be done for roughly $250. The point of all of this is quite simple. There's a ton of very talented, creative, highly trained people around the world, and they, many of them, all of them, many young, are being handed an incredibly powerful set of tools to advance the frontiers in science, in various categories, in health, in education, and in the economy. So let me get to the economic part. There's more of this. I'll leave these slides behind. I love this. These are the two women who received the Nobel Prize for discovering gene editing. And gene editing is interesting because it's an incredibly powerful technology, and all incredibly powerful technologies are terrifying if they're misused. And you can see that in the discussion around the artificial intelligence. I don't have time for this, but these are the folks who discovered the technology underlying the COVID vaccines, the NMRA technology. And they did it with virtually no support from the scientific community. Okay. So let me talk about the digital technologies. I don't have that much time, so I'll just skip to the main event, and that is this. I wrote a paper with James Medika at Google, and the proposition is basically that this generation of artificial intelligence, the Gen AI, and we're far from done, has the potential to produce an enormous productivity surge in the global economy. Now, you will probably know that this is an appropriate time to have that happen. We're not here in India, but generally there's a significant, serious decline in productivity and lots of other supply-side constraints that are causing all kinds of trouble, including low growth, inflation, etc., higher interest rates, higher costs of capital. So this is the right time for this to come along. So why do we think that's true? It has to do with the characteristics of this technology. One, it's the first AI that has the characteristic, the human-like characteristic, that it can switch domains. And by that I mean, if you talk to it about Indian history, it knows what you're talking about. If you switch to the Italian Renaissance, it's with you. You can tell it, ask it to do the first draft of computer coding, no problem. Okay? No previous version of artificial intelligence did anything like that. And then related to that, it's highly accessible. You don't need technical training to use it. You just talk to it. Might be resident in a robot, and the robot gets stuck, and you tell it where you want to go. And the combination of those two things mean that its footprint in the economy, when you start to look at it, is just enormous. Now, so you can use it in call centers to give people powerful digital assistance. Doctors have to spend 30% of their time writing reports. The AI will write the first draft. Same for computer code, right? It's not just that they're powerful digital assistants for humans, they're powerful digital assistants for machines, systems as well. So you're going to discover that these very complex things that we call global supply chains or networks, which are almost impossible for human beings to penetrate, because of the sheer complexity. They're constructed in a highly decentralized fashion. Nobody has a complete view of it, but the AIs can do it with probably very large increases, reductions in inefficiency increases, and visibility of transparency, and eventually performance. Some of the, not all, but some of the supply chain congestion that you associate with the pandemic disruptions of supply chains could have been avoided, if you could see in to the global supply chains and anticipate better, that there were going to be blockages in semiconductors and a whole lot of other areas, ocean shipping costs, etc. So those are the two reasons. Now, this isn't going to happen on autopilot. There's several issues. One is there's a very, very powerful automation bias in the way people think about this. That is, you know, if we went out on the street now and said, well, describe this technology and ask people what they think, the first thing they'll think is they're coming for my job. I mean, I don't have to document that, you just read the newspapers, you can tell. Now, where does this come from? It actually has a fairly natural source. Eric Brynjolfsson at Stanford calls this the Turing trap. Alan Turing's the genius that basically gave us the computer. And he proposed that we evaluate artificial intelligence progress by asking the following question. Can you produce a machine that when a human interacts with that machine, the human thinks he's or she is interacting with another human? Very stretch goal. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer. And all you could see from what I showed you before, AI progress is benchmarked against human performance. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. And we have very valuable superhuman AIs, things humans simply can't do. We have AIs that are about the same as humans, and we have AIs that are pretty good but don't quite measure up to the human performance benchmark. They're all valuable, right? There's a tendency to think, well, if it doesn't, you know, if we haven't beat the human, it's not terribly useful. So I teach a class on this that has to do with inclusive growth, and I tell the students that 2 kids at Stanford used the image recognition software and assembled a very large training database and essentially established that the AIs were pretty good at detecting skin cancer. You can do the same thing with this retinopathy problem that you get in the retina that causes blindness and so on. Anyway, so they succeeded. The dermatologist said it was pretty good. And then I say to the students, all of whom live, you know, in a large metropolitan area, but it's not as good as the dermatologist, what are you going to do? And they say, I'm going to the dermatologist. And I say, well, that's fine. And I said, so what do you think of this? And they said, well, it was a nice try, but it's not very interesting. And I say, 85% of the world's population doesn't live anywhere near a dermatologist. You want to revise your thinking. I mean, it's obvious, you know. People who live 100 kilometers aren't going to get on a train often enough to get their skin checked. But you can take a picture of your skin with your phone, right? Send the images in, the AI says, there's a problem here. It's just a core little bit of incremental help in the area of preventive primary care. Anyway, so to establish that. So once we benchmark the AI against humans, the next step is the dangerous one. I know I'm telling you this so you can avoid it. And that is, well, once the AI passes the human, why don't we get rid of the human? Okay? And that's not the right answer. So James and I and many other people think that the way this will evolve, in spite of this bias, is in the direction of essentially machine-human collaboration and a powerful digital assistant. At least that's what should happen. I'm almost out of time, so let me just say there are other things that have to happen. Implementation is incredibly important in this world. You know, things that managers of companies who do transformational changes in the business model and the technological underpinnings know how to do this. And it's all about communication and, you know, training and skills and a lot of things that you would not put in the purely technology category. So if a hospital administrator stands up and says, we're going to have AI now for everybody, and then drops it there, it'll get massive amounts of resistance. So that's one point. The second point is, we need, if we're going to get the full benefits, whether they're measured in productivity terms or better health outcomes or everything or anything, we're going to need this to diffuse across the entire economy, both domestically and ideally across boundaries as well. That's not necessarily going to happen on autopilot for a number of reasons. One, the big entities, especially companies, are already experimenting intensively with billions of dollars in the applications of this technology. But there's lots of small and medium-sized businesses that are sort of standing around scratching their head, wondering what's going on. And that's not going to work. If you look at previous rounds of digital adoption, what you find is the opposite of what I'm saying is needed, dispersion. So in previous rounds of digital adoption, with kind of routine jobs and all that stuff, you've got tech up here, finance here, and then you get down here in healthcare and government, and, nothing's happening, or it's just much, much slower. So we have to avoid that, and the government has a really important role in this, and eventually the international institutions will have an important role. I say that because right now, what I think is happening is the private sector has decided this is great and is running with it. The public and the public sector is basically busy concerned with a bunch of really important downside risks and potential misuses of this technology. And I have no reason or inclination to marginalize the importance of regulation, downside risk. I mean, there's pretty much uniformity on the proposition that an unregulated version of this is not going to happen and is a bad idea. Now, what those regulations look like as you go across the globe is going to be an interesting thing to watch, and it's a pretty good guess that they won't be the same as you move from China to India to Europe and across the Atlantic to the United States. But what James and I are saying is this needs to be complemented with a set of policies on the upside potential side that are designed to make the applications of this inclusive. So I hope I've convinced you that, by the way, I think this is going to show up in economics. There's lots of interesting questions. These are prediction machines, but they're big black boxes. We kind of like models, at least I still do. And for business and economic purposes, it's sort of important to know what exactly in the systems that and there are complex systems, what are the forces that are producing the results? That's why we build models, right? And with an AI, we might find very interesting patterns, but there's a challenge in terms of reverse engineering these things so we can figure out what it's actually doing so we know structurally what's going on in the economy. There's a very interesting set of questions about whether these things will pick up structural change. So if you're an asset manager and you believe this clown Mike Spence up here who's saying there's kind of, secular structural change that may have an effect on the way both the economy and asset markets work, you probably don't want an AI trained on the last 25 years of data, to tell you what they think ought to happen or even predict what's going to happen next. So that's another example of why these things there's a complex and as yet unexplored interaction between that and traditional modes of understanding complex systems with models and empirical research that tests the model. So if I were a young economist, I would regard this as a target-rich environment. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you all produce. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spence, for this insightful lecture, and especially we appreciate the note of optimism in relation to AI and economics. Can we please have Dr. Mashelkar for the concluding remarks?
Thank you very much. I think we have witnessed one of the most profound, most insightful talk that this auditorium has had. And the energy and excitement and expectation is obvious from this super packed hall. So thank you very much, Professor Spence, for this great morning. I would just make 2 or 3 comments. The first is about the exponential. The challenge with exponential is the following. I normally give an analogy of lilies in the pond. There is a pond where there are lilies and they double up every day. On day 30, the pond is full. So on day 26, it is only 1/16 full because doubling up. So you go to that pond and look at it, 94% of it is empty, and you say nothing can happen. And within 4 days, you go and see it is full. I think your talk actually tells us as to how rapidly the things are changing in the world because of the technology. And therefore, you always say we have done in 5 years what we couldn't do in 50 years. But what we'll do in next 5 years is going to be very, very difficult to understand. And therefore, I think your lecture basically pinpoints that particular point. Because like what you talked about, I'm a scientist, so I understand when you talk about the protein 3D structure and how hard we had to work even to get the structure of a protein done. And suddenly you find this 200 sort of million kind of a phenomenon. So I think that's very, very sort of exciting. The other part that I picked up is that, you know, when we talk about the digital world, and I'm very happy you use the word geo-revolution. I'm going to mention this to Mukesh because he really brought in the revolution. When I presented the book to you, the leapfrogging to pole vaulting, I told you the genesis of that was to create leadership, calling them beyonders who go beyond the realms of possibility. And you can see, and I have followed your lectures during the time you are here, and you have been talking very effusively about the digital economy and so on and so forth. But that exponentiality, what we couldn't see 5 years ago and today, is because of this geo-revolution that you sort of talked about. But the interesting part is that exponentiality is also bringing inclusion, as you can quite clearly see, because when you make things not just affordable, but extremely affordable, and if it is affordable excellence, you have huge inclusion, as you can sort of quite clearly sort of see. So I think that is another very interesting aspect. The other one is when we talk about digital transformation and digitization, there is a difference. It is like having a caterpillar and converting it into, or transforming it into a butterfly. It is not about taking a caterpillar and making it a faster caterpillar. And when we talk about transformation, the new state has no relationship with the state that you saw. There is no resemblance between a caterpillar and... So I think this particular talk of yours, technology and the idea of the future, I think is phenomenal. And therefore the future it's not only our future, but the future of technology and how that will actually transform sort of our future. These are very, very profound thoughts. We are highly constrained by time, by the way, because he has to catch a flight from Mumbai, so I will not speak for long. All that I can request you to do is that we show our appreciation for this wonderful, wonderful, not just scholarly talk, but most insightful. I've learned so much from this. I'm sure each one of you have learned so much from just these 20 minutes of Professor Michael Spence's Kale Memorial oration today. So shall we show our appreciation in the greatest thunderous applause that this auditorium has had. I think he deserves a standing ovation, please. Now once more, all good things have to be repeated. Thank you, sir.